He was just a driver. No family, no money, no future. Then one quiet morning, an old man changed everything, and what happened next will leave you speechless. My name is James. I never had much, but I always worked hard and I never gave up. I grew up in a small terraced house on the outskirts of Manchester with my mum and younger sister. We had just enough to get by. School was tough, money was always tight, and I left early to find work, any work I could get. At 18, I became a driver. Nothing fancy, just ferrying people about and keeping the car spotless. One afternoon, I got a call. A wealthy gentleman in the Cotswolds needed a quiet, reliable driver. I put on my best shirt, tidied myself up, and stood at his gate, nervous but full of hope. He walked out slowly, old and composed, with a white beard and a calm, deep voice. He looked me over and said, "You're young, but you seem polite. I'll give you a try. Just don't talk too much." His name was Mr. Hargreaves. He was well known in the county, wealthy, private, and very much a man of few words. No wife, no children, no friends around, just staff, silence, and tall stone walls. He didn't say much at first, just told me where to go and watched the country roads in silence. But I stayed patient. I drove carefully, arrived on time, and never touched his belongings. Weeks passed like that, calm and quiet, just driving from village to town and back again. Sometimes he read books in the back seat. Sometimes he just stared out at the rolling hills. I never asked questions, never tried to make conversation. I simply did my job and stayed in my lane. But one day he asked quietly, "Do you enjoy driving, James?" I smiled and said, "Very much, sir." He nodded slowly and said nothing more. But after that day, he talked a little more. He told me stories about his younger days, about London in the 50s, about the hardships after the war, about the people he had loved and lost. I listened carefully, never interrupted, just drove while he remembered his life. He said I reminded him of someone, a lad he once helped but had lost touch with over the years. He grew softer with time. He let me help with errands, and sometimes even joined me for a cup of tea. I still lived simply in a small room near the garage, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long while. Peace. I had no father growing up, no older brother to look up to, but somehow Mr. Hargreaves filled both those spaces, quietly and without ever making a fuss. One evening he said to me, "You're an honest lad, James, and that's rarer than you'd think. Don't ever lose it." I said, "Thank you, sir." And I meant every word. His words meant the world to me. I never thought about money or reward. I was simply glad to be trusted. The days settled into a gentle routine. He started asking small things, soft music in the car, a quick stop for tea, a slower route through the countryside. He was old but sharp, and noticed everything, from the color of the autumn leaves to my polished shoes. One day he looked tired and leaned back in the seat. He said quietly, "Stay close today, James." I stayed near. I watched his steps, helped him with his bags, walked beside him. He sat on a bench beneath the old oak tree and told me that was where his wife used to sit. His voice broke a little, his hands trembled, but he smiled gently, lost in memory. After that day, he trusted me even more. The weeks that followed brought new routines, trips to the doctor, medicine boxes on the kitchen counter, slow morning walks around the garden. I held his arm, helped him into chairs, brought his favorite Earl Grey tea, and kept the car warm. He talked more during our drives, about life and regrets, about how quickly time passes when you're not paying attention. He asked me once, "Do you have dreams, James?" I paused, then said, "A simple life, respect, peace, and a family one day." He nodded, smiled slightly, and said, "Good dreams, strong dreams, worth chasing." Then he looked out the window, as if seeing something far away, something time could not erase. One afternoon, he handed me a worn leather journal, old and filled with his thoughts and reflections on life. He said, "This is my heart on paper. Keep it safe." Inside were pages of hard-won wisdom, about work, about love, about family, about forgiveness. I read a few pages each night by lamplight and learned things he had never said aloud. The house grew quieter. Fewer guests came. His world became smaller each day. But he trusted only a few people, and I was always at the top of that short list.
One cold evening, he slipped near the front steps. I ran across the gravel to lift him up with care. He smiled and said, "Thank you, lad," but I saw the fear hiding behind those tired eyes. He said softly, "I'm getting old, James." And I replied, "I'm here, sir. Don't worry. I won't leave." We sat together in the quiet dusk, two people from completely different worlds, but close in heart. One evening, he called me into his study late and handed me a small wooden box. Inside lay a watch, old and silver, with initials engraved on the back, and a quiet, solid weight to it. He said, "This belonged to my father. Now it's yours, because time belongs to those who truly care for it." My hands trembled. All I could whisper was, "Thank you, sir." He said, "You are like the son I never had." Those words broke something open inside me. I never expected to hear that. I was just a driver, but somehow, in his eyes, I had become something more. I said quietly, "You've been like a father to me too." He nodded, silent and full of meaning. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake watching the stars through the small window and thought about how quietly life can change everything. Mr. Hargreaves began to walk slower each morning, his voice turning soft and tired. I helped him sit in the sun, brought his tea with honey, and stayed near in silence. He often looked up at the sky, like he was searching for someone or waiting for a message. The garden became our peaceful place. We sat under the old oak tree, watching the colors change with the seasons, sharing stories without any rush. He spoke of his late wife, how she laughed, how she loved rainy Sunday mornings with a good book. I could see how deeply he still missed her, even after all those years. One day, a solicitor visited the house, bringing official papers and serious words. He asked me to sit and listen, telling me it concerned me more than I realized. He looked me steadily in the eyes and said, "You've been my family, James, when I had none." I felt my chest tightened, unsure of what was coming. He explained that he had changed his will and left everything to me, the manor, the grounds, the car, and his savings, all passed into my name. I tried to speak, but my voice failed me. He gently placed his hand over mine. "No one ever gave you much," he said, "but you gave me peace when I needed it most." He made me promise to care for the garden, to let children play on the lawn. He said, "Build something honest with what I leave you, James, and make it grow slowly." I told him I would try my best. He nodded, like that was all he needed. That winter morning, he didn't wake up. I found him still in his favorite armchair, the fire still glowing, a book resting on his lap, his glasses hanging from his shirt pocket. I sat beside him for a long while, not crying, just holding his warm old hand. He had gone peacefully, at home, with warmth nearby, and the world quiet around him. The funeral was small and simple. A few people, soft classical music, and a vicar who spoke kindly. I gave a short eulogy and talked about his quiet kindness and how he had given me purpose. Afterwards, I stayed at the graveside alone, standing among the fresh flowers. I thanked him again for trusting me, for changing my life, for making me better. The house felt like his still. His voice lived in the walls. I didn't change anything for weeks. I just cleaned, watered the plants, and remembered. Then I opened his journal again, and this time I read every single word. He had written about dreams he never chased, regrets he never made right, and lessons he desperately wanted to pass on. He talked about how money fades, how health matters, and how love is everything. Reading those pages felt like hearing his voice again. So I began to plan something, a center, a place where lonely people could feel heard, a proper home with books, music, and gardens, for the elderly, the tired, the forgotten. I used the room he loved most and turned it into a quiet space with soft chairs and warm lamps. I opened the garden gates to children, to laughter, to simple, everyday joy. People came with quiet hearts, carrying years of silence, pain, and tired memories. Some sat alone by the window for hours. Others told stories from their youth, laughed gently, or cried while holding warm hands. Every corner had books, plants to tend, and blankets for cold afternoons. Children ran through the garden chasing butterflies, and elderly guests smiled watching them. One old man arrived on a freezing November day with no coat, carrying only a small bag and hollow eyes. He said nothing for days, just sat near the oak tree watching the birds. I brought him soup and a warm brew, gave him clean socks, and let him rest in silence. One morning he looked up at me and said, "I feel warm for the first time in years." Those 7 words were worth more than anything. A woman came with her daughter, exhausted after long nights at the hospital nearby. She had nowhere else to go. The little girl had no school, no friends, no books. We gave them a room to rest, toys to play with, and a bed that smelled like fresh flowers. The girl laughed on the swing while her mother finally slept a full night. People began to donate food, clothing, books, old armchairs, small pieces of art. They brought what they had, not because I asked, but because they felt the warmth and wanted to give it back. I named the garden after him, a small stone plaque with Hargreaves' Peace Garden carved into it. People came to sit there, to think, to rest, to remember someone they had loved and lost. It became a quiet, sacred spot, where tears were welcome and nothing felt out of place. Sometimes I sat there too, feeling the sun on my face and the breeze through the roses. Years passed. The center kept growing. More rooms, a music corner, a small library full of soft chairs, a garden kitchen. People shared meals and stories after dinner. Some laughed.
Some cried, some just listened. One young lad turned up at the door, lost and frightened, carrying nothing but a worn jacket and a crumpled photograph. He looked just as I had once looked, full of fear, pain, and a heavy silence inside. I gave him a blanket, warm food, and all the time he needed. Days later, he said to me, "I thought I had no worth, but you made me feel human again." In that moment, I heard Mr. Hargreaves' voice, and I understood. The circle was complete.